what needs a perfect effort and what doesn't. Use the standard of personal bests and best efforts rather than perfection. You want to see progress, not perfection. Okay. Children can also be overindulged with attention. And I see this all the time. Parents come dragging home from work and they say, okay, now I've got to play with my kid for 2 hours. And, you know, it's a strain on them and it's also unnecessary. Children don't need that much direct time with you. I'm going to really let you off the hook. If you play interactively or read interactively with your child for 40 minutes a day, that's enough. If you do 20 in the morning, 20 in the evening, it's enough. Children benefit much more from playing on their own, using their fantasy, their imagination, their creativity, because there's a very small window for that to develop. So don't be one of those Disneyland parents who feels like, okay, I've got to have an art project set up and I've got to play a game with them and then I've got to do this with them. No. 20 minutes, twice a day is enough. Also, time is given in excess. If it interferes with the children doing things for themselves, putting on their tutu. It's excessive when your child's non-emergency demands are allowed to interrupt something you're doing. Like when you're on the phone. And I'm sure you've all had that experience. As soon as you put a phone to your ear, they want something from you. You need to train them not to do that. Because they need to learn delayed gratification and to tolerate frustration. I used to tell my kids, if I'm on the phone, you can interrupt me if you're bleeding or the house is on fire. Other than that, it can wait. I also want to mention that that 40 minutes of time that you spend with them doesn't need to be a special activity. It can just be hanging out. It can be taking a walk and picking up leaves. It can be just lying on the grass and watching the clouds. It doesn't have to be some special activity. Appropriate attention would also include, as your children get older, and none of your kids are old enough except yours, is to have family dinners. You cannot have a family dinner with a 3-year-old because they need to eat at 5 o'clock and you probably don't want to eat them. You can sit with them while they eat, but if you're planning on a family dinner, they need to be probably 5 or 6 years old. But at that time, try and do it as often as you can, because this is a time when the family gathers and it's about the socializing, it isn't about the eating. They find that kids who have family dinners communicate better, are better adjusted, and do better in school. So it's a goal. Okay. Also, when your children are entertaining themselves, when you're not spending your time with them, you want them to have plenty of time where they're not interacting with screens, whether that be computers or iPads or televisions or phones, because that isn't them using their imagination. It has a place in learning, and it's certainly a part of our world, but it's not a creative part. Also, don't overpraise your children. That's also too much attention. Please don't be one of those good job parents, where every time your child moves, it's good job. Good job getting up this morning. Good job getting out of bed. Good job brushing your teeth. Good job breathing. You're doing great. Save it for something that's truly laudable. Otherwise, it just becomes this meaningless phrase that you're saying. All right, stress personal values over to conformity. Identify with your parenting partner the values that you want to instill in your children. Sometimes parents are going for very different values because they've never discussed between them what their value system is. You convey your values to your child both by your behavior and by your words, but very much by your behavior because they're always watching what you're doing. Notice and reinforce any choices that your children make that reflect your values, whether it's sharing or showing empathy or being honest. Make sure you comment on that. When they start saying to you, and this happens after they go to school, but everyone gets to fill in the blank. Watch that movie, play on the computer for 12 hours, stay up until 10 o'clock. Don't believe it, first of all. And secondly, my favorite phrase to say to children is, maybe they do, but in our family, this is how we do it. And children really start to buy into that concept of in our family, whether it's a value or a behavior. And you hear them out on the playground as they get a little older, chastising other kids, saying, well, in our family we don't do that. But it's good for them to know that each family has their own value system. And don't let yourself be persuaded by what other parents do. We are raising children, I should say, not growing up. Hopefully we've grown up. Children are growing up in a very multicultural, global world. And the person sitting next to you has different values, different customs than you do. So you can't look at the person next to you to decide what the right thing is. You really have to decide that within your own family and stick to it. And expect your children to carry your rules and values with them. Just because they go to somebody else's house and their parents allow them to watch a certain kind of TV show or movie doesn't mean that your child is off the hook and they can do that. They need to be able to say, I'm sorry, but my parents don't let me watch that. So you begin to teach them to carry their values. Help caring and compassion develop. In some children, this is really natural. They seem to come into the world being very empathic. Other children need to learn to do it. And it doesn't mean they're inferior. It just means that's how they are. One of the things you can do is help children learn to recognize verbal and non-verbal expressions of feelings in other people. So they know that if they hug somebody too hard and the person says stop, that they hear that and they know that they need to stop. Or if they're teasing somebody and the person looks sad, that they need to notice that. They need to read the facial expressions. The way that you teach empathy to kids is you turn things around. Let's say they grabbed a toy from a friend. You say to them, how would you feel if your friend grabbed a toy from you? Because they can relate to their own feelings. So you always turn it around that way. You want to model caring and empathic behavior so that your children see you doing favors for friends, making soup for a friend who's sick, picking up someone else's kids, celebrating someone else's occasions. And let your children know that you expect them to show caring and empathy even towards you, believe it or not. You have the right to rest if you need to rest. You have the right to be sick if you're sick. if you were gonna go to Disneyland and you ended up being sick and your child is complaining and grousing about that, you turn it around and you say to them, how would you feel if you were sick and I said, no, we're going anyway, I don't care how you feel, so that they understand. Don't tolerate rudeness, because in rudeness, other people's feelings are at stake. And sibling relationships, which you're all dealing with, teach you to discourage hostile competitiveness, cruel teasing, and bragging. Those are all unacceptable. Instead, you want to model and promote sharing, turn-taking, and compromise. That's one of the big pluses of having a sibling, is that you get to learn that stuff in your family.
Do you punish if your child does that?
If
So-
they,
This was like one of the worst days. The kindergarten is like, the kids become mean in kindergarten. Wait for this next year. I never thought my kids were capable of this. So they're in different classes, and one kid gets to lead the Pledge of Allegiance in her class, and she was behind the microphone, and she did a beautiful job. And I took a video of it, and we're looking over it later, and she goes, I'm not proud of her for doing that. And I don't care that she did that. And I said, you know, I understand that. Do you wish that you had that opportunity, or you're gonna have to turn two, and like all that stuff. I said, but I learned this from you. We have a responsibility to our family, and that's not the way that you treat your sibling, and that must really hurt her feelings. And she goes and rejoices in her sister's misfortunes. So if she gets in trouble at school and her color turns, she's like, haha, Emma's color changed. And the funny thing is, she's the mean one at home, but she's never gotten in trouble at school, which leads me to believe that it's something I'm doing.
not necessarily, it may just be a way of getting your attention or competing for your attention. When she says something like her displeasure with the other one saying the Pledge of Allegiance, just say to her, you know, in our family, we don't do that. We tell our family members that we're proud of them. And I want to see you being more generous than that. I know you have a generous heart, and I want to see it more. Guilt has a definite place in parenting. And
I think I tried something like that, and she was like, well, you can't force me to care. And I think she actually said something like that, and I said, I can't force you to care, but I'm going to ask you to be kind. And that's what I just say, I expect kindness from the two of you. And
right.
oh
Yeah,
my
I
gosh,
know I can't
broke
force
my
you to
heart
care.
and soul.
But I can say to you that our rule is that we don't say unkind things.
That's a good one. I'm writing that down.
How do you reinforce that?
You may have to enforce it through some kind of a consequence.
What would be appropriate for like unkind behavior?
It depends on the child. It could be going to bed early, it could be missing an activity, it could be a timeout. It has to be something that matters to the child.
She didn't get a frozen Band-Aid. That's what happened. She fell and she hurt her knee, and I said, that must really hurt. And she said, yeah. I said, what if Emma came in here and said, haha, you're hurt? And she was like, I wouldn't like that. I said, so the consequence is that you're not getting a frozen Band-Aid, you're getting a plain one from IKEA.
Oh my Did you have to put it together?
I love it.
I wanted to make sure that wasn't
That's good. You want to teach. You also want to teach respect for differences, because your kids aren't going to be the same. And if one says, you know, I'm smart and you're stupid, or I'm pretty and you're ugly, or I'm a good athlete and you're a klutz, then you have to intervene and say, wait a minute, we don't compare. Each person has things they do well and things they don't do so well. And what we're looking for is everybody does their personal best and makes their best effort. And we don't compare. Okay, and finally, Instill gratitude in your children. Happiness and gratitude are inextricably linked. Children can't be happy unless they're also grateful. How do you develop gratitude in a child? One thing you can do is let them go to work with you and see how money is earned. If you say to a little kid, how do you make money? They say, well, you get a piece of paper and a green crayon, and that's how you make money. Or you go to this machine and you put in something plastic and you get money. Let them see that you go to work and you do something and then somebody gives you money to pay for food and a place to live and clothing and so on. Having them participate in household duties is a really good way for them to see what it takes to make a family run. Your kids are a little young for this, but as they get older, your 5-year-olds and certainly your 13-year-old, expose them to the reality of other people. Thanksgiving is coming up. It's often a time when people volunteer to deliver food to families who need it, or get more involved in regular projects as they get older, where they're helping people who are less fortunate. Let your children know that they need to express gratitude, not just feel it. That when someone gives them something, they say thank you. If someone invites them to a party, they say thank you for having me, and don't speak for them. They need to express that. And develop traditions within your family for noticing the good and expressing gratitude for it. And this is a very timely thing with Thanksgiving coming up, that a lot of families use that opportunity to go around the table and say something that they're grateful for. But don't save it just for Thanksgiving. Do it once a week at a family dinner. Or do it every night when you put your children to bed. Tell me something that you were grateful for today. So that they get used to extracting from their experiences those things that are good that have happened to them. Now, you are probably feeling overwhelmed by all these ideas, or sort of hot to trot. You're going to go home and try and implement everything. In either case, know that you have many years and millions of opportunities to implement these things. And that each one is going to need to be repeated again and again as your children get older, and the responsibilities they have, the expectations you have for them become greater. Pick a few ideas and try them out. See them through, and then move on to something else. Over time, you will definitely feel and see the changes in your kids, and in yourself as a parent. So, how about any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yeah.
But one of the things you said about them spending time alone, it fosters, it's a great time for them to be alone. Obviously with twins, it's really difficult for kids to be alone. The alone time you're talking about, is that, our kids are barely ever alone. Is that something we need to strive to sort of let them be alone without the other?
No, be alone from us, not
Yeah.
together.
No, that's what I'm talking about. They're with each other a lot.
Right.
And I'm curious because my niece, who's obviously a singleton, she's alone with her own thoughts and her own toys, and it's a different kind of developmental situation. I'm not sure if it's good or bad, or should we try and give them, I'm not talking about from us, because they have enough time alone without us.
Right.
I'm talking about without each other.
It's an interesting question. I think that I would. In fact, this is something I talk about when we talk about siblings, that it's a very good idea for each of your kids to spend one-on-one time with each of you.
Right.
And also, maybe you stay home with one of them and the other parent goes out with one of them, and you have some work to do or something, and they have a little time to do something on their own. Because yes, there's creativity going on with a sibling, but there's a different kind of creativity going on if they're alone. And they don't need fancy toys to be alone with. You know, put a child in a room with an empty box, and they're gonna find something to do with that box. It's gonna become a spaceship, or it's gonna become a house or a cave. So try to include all the different elements. Yeah.
You mentioned the window of creativity was kind of narrow. What were you aligned to? Like, what's that window? Age-wise, or
Sorry?
what age? Yeah, or
You know, I really feel by the time children get out of the early childhood stage, which is by 3rd grade, they're more exposed to the cultural learning and scientific learning of the world, and less to their own thoughts, unless you have a very creative child. So when they're young, they're more likely to be more creative, or at least to get those juices flowing. Yes,
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
This is kind of silly, but
nothing silly.
well, we strive to have our kids be independent, but there's the one thing of them brushing their own teeth where it actually has a major consequence if they don't do it correctly over time. Is there an age where, because you know, we want them to do it, but obviously at 4 years old, I'm not sure if they can actually do it correctly where it'll help keep their teeth healthy.
What most parents do is they have the kids brush them, and then they finish up.
Okay.
That wasn't silly. Yeah.
So this is a glimpse into everyone's future. When they're in separate classes and there's 2 different birthday parties, and one is invited and one is not, and you're alone with one of the kids and it's not a drop-off birthday, do you think it's overindulgence? Like if it was at like a pottery place to take the other kid into the back and engage them in the same activity, like color me mine.
Yes,
So one
I
is,
do.
You do think that's,
Yeah.
because I wonder, like, why does, she's not invited, like, she should be able to tell, but of course, if there was 2 parents, one should stay home, not necessarily be doing something just as awesome,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Okay, agree.
Agreed. This is part of learning that, you know, life doesn't go exactly the way you want it to.
It's really, this part gets hard, emotionally hard, like it's psychologically and like spiritually fatiguing when they're small, but when they get older, it's like the guilt is compounded.
But I'm trying to relieve you of the guilt by saying that this will stand them in good stead. Because they're gonna have a job one day and one person's gonna get promoted and they're not. And what are they gonna do? Curl up in a fetal position? They've gotta think about how to handle that. So don't be guilty about it. This is good preparation. Any other questions?
Is it, I mean, as far as twins go, we've been talking about when they get to an age where they should be separated or should not. I mean, our kids are, boy, girl, they're complete individuals, different. Now, when they're at pre-K, they are in the same class, but they don't play together. They always know where the other one is, and once in a while they go up and give each other a hug, that sort of thing, from what we, you know, from our teachers. But if they go to another school as they get older, is it imperative that they get separated? In
It
different
really
classes?
is.
Even if it's like if we change schools and it's the first year where they still get to be in the same class and they at least have each other as that support when they go into that new transition?
But other children don't have that support. Other children are learning how to negotiate a social life on their own. You want to give your children that same opportunity.
It's scary but necessary.
Yeah.
I was apprehensive and it was a good choice.
Cool.
First we wanted to separate them, but then we thought, well, they are separated at school even though they're in the same class. Just be easier on us. But
Yeah, but that makes sense.
yeah, that makes sense to have them navigate their own way.
Lots, but we'll have to make an appointment.
I just want to mention that I have my book here, because this is my favorite topic that I speak on. what do I call it, the Indulgence Trap. And these are available if anybody's interested, they're $20, and it has to say what I said, but a lot more. Okay? Thank you.